Hello and welcome to part 3 of this Project in a Box video series, where we're looking at the new features in the launch of version 5.3. In this session we're going to be looking at the property enhancements and also at the new method templates that are provided. So we're in our project and we can see here some status blobs showing against each of the processes. Previously we had system set properties which you could alter yourselves if you wanted to determine the start, deliver and close of the project and its status. They were consistent across all projects in the system, but that meant when you had different types of projects with different statuses, so for example an agile project of course would have very different types of processes to a waterfall or Prince2 type project, you still had those same settings and that didn't quite make sense for everybody. So now you have a new model of properties which feeds the properties model, which are properties that come from the processes within your project. You can define what those are within Method Manager, and we're collecting a status and a description or comments or notes for each of the processes. To access that, you simply come to the form, the Explorer form. You select the process and you'll see there's a new item here, process data. And this allows us to set up the properties that have been defined. So they're defined in Method Manager. In this case, all of our methods have these two options. So we can choose a status. So I'm going to say this is, so we've gone for a typically not started, completed, green, amber, red. So we're going to say this process is operating okay. And we're going to give some notes about it. This needs discussing, for example. And we can apply those like that. And then they're now in the process model. That will be in the properties database and available for use in all sorts of places. And that can include display back onto the diagrams. Now some of these things don't display immediately. After a refresh, they'll then show up here. So this is allowing people, as they come in and see the project, to see immediately how that project is progressing in terms of the processes, which ones are completed and which ones are the current ones and how they're going, and some notes about those. In practice we tend to be in deliver most often, so that's why we've provided the notes here, but of course you can do whatever you want to in how you lay out your method template diagrams. So that's all new. We'll have a look at that in the Windows application in a second, but just before we do, let's have a look at the more generic system project properties which apply consistently on every project in the system. You've always been able to access those in the browser through this properties form, which allows you to have to go to a particular collection of the properties and to see those here. The ones that are editable will be editable here. The ones that are system project properties, the ones that are coming from somewhere else, you might see that latest bit of information, but you won't necessarily be able to edit it. So here, for example, I could come in and put a comment or description of this project like that and apply and close that, and these ones actually will reflect immediately onto the diagram. Now that's a really useful thing, to be able to jump to a particular set of properties. So when we've got this click area identified here, it's set up to go to that properties form and to open a particular saved set of those properties. So that means you can have a number of these things if you want to, associated with getting people to input certain sets of data, and you can drop those in wherever you want to around the process model and diagram. So that's really useful, and we've mirrored the same approach in the Windows application. So if I come in and obviously we've got a slightly different project that we're running here, but the same approach will apply. When I click on a process and have the process selected here, I can right click on it here and do process data, and we get the same sort of form. So I can say this is running at an amber, say, and I could again provide some notes, and of course I can pop out the form to do the notes in more detail if I need to, and those things will come up and refresh on the diagram straight away for us here. And obviously we've got the same sort of thing up here. Now in previous versions you always had to get your update your system project properties from the info panel, you always saw all of them there. Now we have the same idea as the browser, where you can choose a particular view and go and update those from here. In a couple of the methods we'll look at a bit later, we'll see how that really comes into its own. Most of the methods use the same sort of set here, but some of them go to particular ones that are of interest at different places. So that's about making it much easier for people to engage with the properties that they need, putting them really close to the users. Of course, you need to have the appropriate permissions to be able to access those properties. That's as to be expected. And actually that material there, these process properties, as I say, feed into the full properties model, and they're available out into reporting as well. So if I run an instant project statement report here, this is a new version of the project statement report. There's a few new reports with a few new elements in them in this new release. And so one of the things we've done here is to display those properties across here. So you're seeing the properties that are appropriate for the project in that chart. So like I say, it's not the previous old simple model of start, deliver, close, but it's the processes that match the and the statuses of them that match the project. Okay, so that's that. Now we're going to have a look at some of the different method templates that we're using here in the new version, and most of them have this new element of this dynamic content. Most of them also have a secondary admin model, so secondary screen like this, and broadly there's consistency between how they work in the Windows application and how they work on the browser. It's pretty much the same diagram. There are a few extra features that we support in the browser, in the Windows application, that aren't in the browser. So a couple of the buttons have been taken away on the browser diagrams, but nearly all of it is exactly the same, and certainly the core things are. So let's snip back to the browser to have a look at some of those then. So we've just seen 3-step and 5-step models. If we come and select a project, we'll have a look at some of the other ones within this set. So let's come here to our set of test diagrams. This is 1-step model. So this is for simple activities that are not really quite projects, a bit below the project level, and therefore it's a simplified interface as well. We've taken away some of the other activities. The admin is about bringing you to admin. It's not taking you to a second screen of navigation, because it's a much simpler approach, simpler set of documents, simpler set of data. So you can see that diagram is a little bit different. We talked about 3-step. We talked about 5-step. Let's have a look at a 4-step one. Very similar actually to 3 and 5 steps in terms of it's a full project model. We've got the same sorts of, obviously, different processes, text shown in different places, but basically the same information being collected, and again this has that secondary admin screen to it, just like the other 3 and 5 steps do. We have a variation on this 4-step model, which is the demand process though. And this allows your 4-step project, which is the most common method used in the system, to be gated. And it's gated at the end of concept. So we have a slightly more sophisticated concept stage. Rather than the project coming in fully launched, you have a concept stage which expects you to collect a bit more. There's idea information form that we're going to fill in with information about why the project is a good idea. We're going to collect mandate and supporting information and do all those sorts of things to allow us to drive the process of should this idea of a project being taken forward into being a full project. And until it is, we can't access the rest of the process model. So we've got this one diagram controlling that. Obviously the data we're showing up here is quite different. We're going to be showing things like the score from that idea spreadsheet and other properties which are more appropriate to the idea activity than the actual project. The reports we're linking to are going to be about the idea status and its development over time, rather than about the delivery of the actual project. Now obviously, as we saw before, we can come into some of these boxes and update content, but the particular one that we're interested in here is we're using that same project properties form we talked about earlier, but this time it's coming to a view which is idea status, and this just shows us the one field, the idea field, which is the one that we need if we're going to activate this project and make it an approved project for ongoing delivery as a proper project. This is of course only accessible to people with a certain permissions level, but once I come in and complete that approval, when we reselect the project, we'll find that now uses the full 4-step model. Now of course it's going to have its content and concept the same as it was before, but now we've got access to all the rest of it, and it's changed the diagrams over, and it's showing us all our stats that are appropriate for the project rather than the idea. So it's flipped a gate. So it's quite a more sophisticated model. There's no reason why you can't do that with any of your models and projects that you want to, your processes. You can gate them in that sort of way. You can control the switching of that gate by properties in the project. And you can obviously show different data in those. Of course, in these diagrams, you can also, if you want to, show different diagrams to different users, for example. And that's something we're increasingly seeing people engage with. So giving a director, for example, when they open the project, they see a very simple sort of dashboard view and a couple of buttons for running reports. They don't see all the detailed process metrics, etc. They won't see all the detailed admin stuff. And when a normal user accesses it, they see a more rich view. So focusing different audiences on the things that are relevant to them. So that's our core sort of 1, 3, 4, 5-step methods. All of those are available either with Word templates or with piabx templates. So the piabx templates replacing the Word ones. Of course, all of them still use some Excel and SPN templates as well, but it's about replacing Word with piabx templates. So the I methods described are the ones with piabx templates, and if it's not described as an I method, it's using Word templates. So we've obviously got quite a few other methods here. We won't look at all of them, but we'll just pick out a few of them. We have the sort of full print to method, and here we haven't changed the fundamentally the way that the navigation of this works. We've just added this button onto all of the panes, so as you come through your normal navigation process, you've always got this here, which is showing you the current status of the project. That's an active dynamic display blob, and when you click on that, it takes you to a sort of fuller dashboard where you see many of the things that we show on the other diagrams in our other methods. And this is also navigable to processes here as well, so you can jump off to things quickly, but it's got many of those more high-level things like the trends and the controls. And rather than trying to fit all those in what are quite busy Prince2 method diagrams, we've brought it out into a separate activity at the back. And you might like to take this tack with other things as well. So it's on all of these libraries and additional resources and everything else as well. We've taken that same tack with our Prince2 resource pack as well, and also with the Praxis method, so that follows the same sort of approach. Again, there's quite a lot going on in here. We have put the process indicators on these processes here, and then we've got the status to take you off to the dashboard element at the back. And then one last one I particularly wanted to pick out, or perhaps two actually. We'll have a look at the proposal preparation process, which is our sales funnel. Again, of course, the sort of data we're interested in is very different from a project data. What we're interested in here is how we're progressing through the processes of our proposal preparation, and then information about its profitability and its margin and those sorts of things, when it might start. Reports are different, etc. So it's taking us to a very different set of things, but using the same sort of approach. So again, once you're familiar with one, the rest should be fairly obvious. And the last one we want to look at is our Scrum Method. So again, Scrum Method, it has different sorts of data in it. It's using the same sort of idea. We're showing our statuses against these items. We've got different information like which sprint are we in, how far through that sprint are we, what are the current burn rates, etc. Those are the sort of key metrics that we're interested in our Scrum project. We still, of course, do still have those other things, and we've got our secondary admin menu. We can see we've got a lot of overdue tasks in this particular project, and these are the sort of things that are, in this dynamic navigation that really help to draw your eye, and as a newbie project manager are going to point you to the things you need to be paying attention to. Okay, so that's a run through the new properties features, and also a look through some of the new method templates. Like I say, all of our standard method templates have been upgraded in this release for these new features. One thing I should actually say is that we haven't changed any of the process structures in these new methods. So what that means is, if you've got an existing project which you've been running from the last release in one of our 2017 or 2018 methods, you can change the method associated with the project to the new version, the 2020 version, and that is going to give you all these navigation elements, dynamic navigation and display immediately. So it'll change the diagram that you're looking at, but all these things will pop into life. Of course, you'll have to go and set the process properties, but the stats, etc., will just flow in straight away and be visible on your diagrams. So you don't have to do a whole load of work or wait to use this as you transition projects, new projects in. You'll be able to apply this to existing projects as long as they're not too old in the model. Okay, great. If you've got any further questions, as usual, do drop us a line and we'll be glad to help with those. Thank you.